Hey everyone, welcome to Bite Your Tongue, the podcast. Join me, your host, Denise Gorant, as we explore the ins and outs of building healthy relationships with our adult children. Together, we'll speak with experts, share heartfelt stories, and get timely advice, addressing topics that matter most to you. Get ready to dive deep and learn to build and nurture deep connections with our adult children. And of course, when to bite our tongues. So let's get started. Hey everyone, it's Denise. Welcome back to another episode of Bite Your Tongue, the podcast. We're so happy you're with us. We appreciate your listening and continuing to support us. Today's episode is one I've been wanting to do for a while, but it wasn't until we got a few voicemails and one long email that convinced us it's time to get to this topic again. But before I tell you what that's all about, I want to tell you something we're very excited about. We're officially on Substack. You can find us at substack.com at Bite Your Tongue Pod. You can also watch or listen to all the episodes on Substack as well. It's quite a platform. But what we're offering is a short piece called Behind the Mic. After each episode, I write about the conversation, what surprised me, what stuck with me, and some personal thoughts. Think of it as a slightly more personal, slightly less polished version of the podcast. And we also want to remind you again of our listener line. Call us anytime at 719-347-1106. We really want to hear from you. You can also still email us at biteyourtonguepodcast@gmail.com. On to today's episode. Today, we're talking about money, your adult children, and the so-called bank of mom and dad. You know, housing costs are high. Kids are still paying off their student loans. Childcare is so expensive, and many parents are quietly helping their adult kids. But at some point, many parents find themselves asking, is this helping? Is it hurting? Am I enabling? How do I stop giving this support without blowing the whole relationship? So today I'm joined by someone who just doesn't talk about money. He studies how we feel about money, how it shapes us, and how our emotions play out in real relationships. Joining us is Dr. Brad Klontz, Klontz. He is, get this, a financial psychologist. He has become a leading voice in the psychology of money. He's co-authored 8 books. He's been featured on all kinds of media from Good Morning America to the New York Times. He helps us understand not just what we're doing with our money, but why. So Brad, welcome to Bite Your Tongue. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. So you're described as a financial psychologist. This sort of shocked me when I first read it. Most people know what a financial planner is, but what's a financial psychologist and why might it be needed for families?
Yeah, so I can understand why it's shocking. Those two words don't tend to go together in general. And it's also a term that I probably made up. So essentially, I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I got really interested in why we do what we do around money. Part of that interest really stemmed from research that psychologists had done. And the American Psychological Association does a Stress in America survey every year. And the number one stressor in 3 out of 4 Americans is money.
Yeah.
A lot of it's psychological. I mean, because we tend to live what we do. We could arguably say that we live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, let alone in world history. Yet, why are so many of us so stressed about money? And so really, that's what I think it is. Looking at what are the beliefs and the emotions and the experiences we have, everything that psychology is interested in, but directed to money. How is it influencing us?
And I think that's so important because I think about that a lot. I grew up with parents that went through the Depression. And so the things that they gave to me to carry on in my life, and then the things I gave to my adult children. You know that the podcast focuses on parents of adult children and some of the struggles and relationship building and that sort of thing. One of the biggest things that's going on right now is this whole idea of the bank of mom and dad. You were quoted in the New York Times article about it. When parents help their children financially, what are the most common emotional drivers for this? Is it fear, guilt, anxiety, love, obligation?
If you have children, I have young children now, but I know there's not going to be a letter in the mail that says, okay, stop everything you've been doing, everything that you're supposed to be doing to take care of and nurture your children. I mean, when is the cutoff? 18? Well, I don't think so. Not in our current society. If it ever was 18, there's college, there's helping them transition. So there really is no hard line on when we shift from, oh, now we have to treat them like adults immediately. So I think it's a tough thing to understand and to really have a plan for when do I stop providing this financial support? Because quite frankly, that is your job as a parent until it isn't. Quite often people wake up with this realization that maybe I've been doing this too long and maybe things aren't going the way I was hoping they would go.
Exactly. When does it turn into enabling? I always say that when they get their first job and they're financially independent, that's when they really become adults. You have strings tied to them, I think, a little bit when you're supporting them. Through college, they have to depend on you, maybe even the beginning of their first job. But then they're situated, they've got a job, they should be able to afford to live. How do we back out of that situation of supporting them?
Yeah. So financial enabling as a concept, this is something that I've been researching for about 20 years. I've done studies on, and I've really arrived at the definition that financial enabling is financial help that hurts. It's not just that it's financial help. And every child's different. So if there'd be a great rule of thumb, oh, every child's like this, you cut them off like this is what you do. Every child's different. So quite frankly, financial help could be hurting a 12-year-old. It could be hurting a 16-year-old. It could be hurting a 25-year-old. It really comes down to what are the behaviors that you're hoping to see from your child, because money is one of the most powerful reinforcers of behavior that there is. The problem with having abundance is it's only logical and it only makes sense. Hey, look, Denise, if you're going to send me a check every week and I don't have to do anything, like why would I suffer? Why would I go purposely try to suffer and be told what to do by somebody who clearly isn't as smart as me, right? And having me do things that are below what I think I should be doing. Why would I suffer through that? And you got to think about what sort of experiences are we wanting kids to have? Some of that suffering is good. How much is suffering is too much? You mentioned your parents from the Great Depression. It's like, I don't want to spoil my kids, so, they get nothing. It's like, well, I mean, there has to be a balance there. We don't want to pass on financial trauma through the generations. But it really is a calculus that you have to look at your specific child and say, are they exhibiting the work ethic I want? Are they exhibiting the behaviors I want to see? Am I really helping them develop into the type of adult I want them to be, quite frankly? And is that money supporting them along that journey, or is it actually hurting them?
Our listener line from someone who was a single mom and really has been helping her son. She admittedly says way too much. And he's now in his 30s, can't stand on his own 2 feet. She's afraid to withdraw the money.
In a nutshell, I know I enabled my son. I bailed him out every chance I get. I didn't want him to fail. I mean, there's just so much that I feel like I've done that I shouldn't have. And now I regret it. Now I'm trying to give him tough love, but at 26 with 3 kids, it's really hard. My thing is, or what I look for in your podcast and from your guests is, even at this age, right? He's an adult parent. I'm a grandparent now. I'm trying to show that tough love. I've enabled him almost his whole life, including up until, 2024-ish. And I don't want to do that, but he's not doing anything. He's not motivated. He has ADHD and depression, and I don't know. I'm struggling because if I would just help him out, I know he could get a job, or I know he could get to the next step, and I just don't know what to do. So that's it. I appreciate your podcast. Thank you for having this hotline, too.
None of what you said he's been doing all along. What can she do at this point?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that is a horrible situation to be in. You had mentioned what are some of the drivers, and I spoke about, well, it's being a good parent is helping your child. But sometimes when we are enabling or creating financial dependence, and that's something else we should talk about, like the psychology of financial dependence. But if you're creating that in somebody, some of the drivers tend to be guilt, as you mentioned. So perhaps I'm a single parent. Perhaps I've failed my child. I mean, hello, you're a parent. You probably did. And it's like, I want to make up for it. That's one that we see. A divorce happened. I feel bad. There are other parents not involved, so that I might enable them, that type of thing. It's a parenting failure in the past. Or I grew up, and this is so common, I grew up not having what I wanted. Not only that, I was ashamed of not having money. Perhaps I was teased for being poor. Perhaps I missed out on opportunities And I am not going to let my kid experience that. Then we might overindulge them because we are just trying to give them a much different experience. But it's challenging because it's painful, because you have actually created this financial dependence in your child. And that's something that is really important for you to wrap your head around. It's really easy for people on the outside to look at that 30-year-old and be like, ah, what a lazy loser. He's taking advantage of his mother. It's like, okay, all right. But I guarantee you this, if you gave me a child, and we don't run experiments like this anymore in psychology because it's unethical, I could create financial dependence in that child. This isn't something that's characterological. It's not something that's broken inside of somebody. All it is a behavior pattern where certain behaviors are being reinforced with money. And so ultimately, if you want to shift the behaviors, you have to shift the reinforcement.
Okay, let's talk about that. I love what you say, creating financial independence. I would say you need to start a lot earlier, when they're not when they're 30, but let's say you're stuck in this situation. There are a lot of kids laying on the couch or playing video games or not doing anything, and the parents are frustrated. What are their first steps in helping them create financial independence?
So the first step is that understanding and wrapping your head around that this is your job to achieve. I have, early in my career, I took a lot of cases where the parent would be like, hey, look, that's the situation. My child's 30. They have 5 graduate degrees from Ivy League schools. They've never got a job. Dr. Brad, they're telling me that they're really anxious about job interviews. And so could you help them with their resume, help them with the job interviewing? And early on in my career, I was like, okay, I can help. Months along this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is smarter than me. They're more well-spoken than me. They would land a job interview much better than I could. What am I doing here? And I realized that the intervention doesn't happen with the child. And that's the challenge. It happens with the parent. You are the one who has all the power and all the control with the purse strings. You have to change your behavior. That's the bottom line.
How are they changing their behavior? Let's walk through something. So you've got this kid. How are they changing their behavior?
Well, you're looking at what behaviors you want to see. So they're exhibiting a certain set of behaviors that are saying, oh my gosh, I created some dependence in this child. I'm enabling them. What are those behaviors? Well, they don't have a job. They're sitting around the couch. I'll be whatever it is. They're playing video games all day, whatever it is. So you have to sort out what sort of behaviors do I want to see changed. The most challenging thing with this is people who end up in this situation tend to be really high in warmth with their child. So they're loving, they're kind, and very low in control. And unfortunately, those children have some of the worst possible outcomes. And that's really hard for people to understand, because you think that I need to love and nurture them. Ironically and interestingly, people who are really hard and controlling and don't show that love and nurturing, those kids do better than kids who get tons of love without the control. Bottom line is, it's going to be some tough love, and you might need to enter it in the way that feels comfortable for you. So perhaps you're going to give your child a deadline. Perhaps you're going to, instead of giving them cash, depending on what they're doing with cash, sometimes they're using drugs, sometimes they're doing all sorts of terrible things, you're going to pay for their medical insurance or something like that. So finding, if giving cash directly is one of the big problems, then you're going to have to stop doing that. Is there another way you can support them? But the bottom line is, there's going to have to be a cutoff date, and they're not going to be ready by the time that cutoff date comes. So you'd like to think that they're going to be back on their feet. They're going to have a job. They're going to have an apartment. But this is a behavior pattern that, as you mentioned, may have been in place for 20 years. The chances are they're going to take it all the way to the line. And in that moment, they're going to do everything that they've always done to try to ramp up, to pull on your heartstrings, to get you to give them more money. And so understanding it, you've created this, you're the only one who can solve it. And then getting some emotional support in place. You can have a plan, you can have your demands, you can have your cutoff dates, but understand whatever behaviors they were engaging in to try to get you to pay more money. And by the way, I've seen it all. I've seen, well, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I can't work. I mean, that's a tough one. If your child has mental illness, oh, do I keep giving them money? Or maybe I'm going to threaten to move across the country. Maybe I'm going to threaten to take my own life. Maybe I'm going to threaten to take yours. I've seen it all. We call this in psychology an extinction burst. Let me just explain this really quickly. We've done studies as psychologists. You put a chicken in a cage, right? And you want to teach them to hit a bar. So every time they hit the bar, they get a piece of food. And so what do? Well, every time they're hungry, they go hit the bar. So maybe that's, Mom, can I have some money? Dad, can I have some money? Dad, I'm starting a new business. Dad, I'm too depressed to go to work. Whatever it is that hits the bar that gives you money, that's the behavior that is going to get reinforced. Now, what scientists have found too, if all of a sudden you change it so when they hit the bar, they don't get that piece of food, we would like to think, well, they'll stop hitting the bar, and they'll go scratch in the dirt and find their own food. That's not what happens. It's called an extinction burst. What happens is that chicken goes crazy on the bar. That chicken hits that bar harder, faster, longer than you've ever seen it happen before. And in those moments, that's when parents, they give in. They give in. And so they reinforce the behavior. It's almost like a kid having a tantrum at the supermarket. And to get them to shut up, you give them a candy bar. Well, what did you just do? Well, they're going to throw more tantrums every time they want a candy bar. So understanding the psychology of it can really help. And just recognizing that you've created this situation and that it's hurting your child, and it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be painful. You're going to need emotional support to guide you through that process.
And that's maybe where you call in the financial psychologist. I just want to say something that you brought up that I see and a lot of my listeners have written in. It's this whole idea of the mental health. Okay, there's mental health and there's mental health, I guess. But you have a son, and it does tend to be boys a lot of the time. You are afraid they're going to commit suicide. You're so afraid. You get so nervous that you just keep giving it to them. I don't know how a parent stops when they're so fearful of this.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it comes down to recognizing that this pattern of behavior that you have created with your child, that is going to cause them significant lifelong harm. And then you're weighing the balance. The bottom line is, and look, I had a sibling who ended his own life. So I'm not suggesting that this is outside of the realm of possibility. It happens. Quite frankly, I will say this, in these situations, these children are using that to manipulate you.
No question
quite
about
frankly. Without a doubt, it is a form of manipulation, and they might actually do it. So I just want you to understand that's the risk that is at play. And especially if they know that this is really triggering your button, they're going to keep triggering your button. That's where it's really tough for me as a financial psychologist too, to tell you, well, you need to do it anyway. The bottom line is you need to know the consequences. You need to know that perhaps you're going to be destroying and ruining your child over the rest of their life, but they're going to stay alive longer. That's what makes it so challenging.
The other thing I've heard from a listener, when the adult child has kids, they've been supporting them all along, and all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, the money I've been giving them, you have to know where the money's going. Someone says, I've got $40,000 in credit card debt. Oh dear, okay, I'll pay that off. I'll help you with that. I'm going to pay it off. And then a month later, they've got $40,000 in credit card debt, and they've got 3 little kids. So when you're punishing the son and his wife or whatever, you're also punishing the kids, and you're thinking, wait a minute, these kids have to have a roof over their heads. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, that just adds more layers of guilt, doesn't it? And and again, in these patterns where somebody is really financially dependent, and understanding that syndrome is really helpful too. So essentially, the studies I've done on financial dependence, it's a very clear syndrome, and it leads to people having less motivation, less passion. They're just more depressed in life, and also significant resentment towards you. And by the way, this happens, you see it in low-income individuals who are dependent on the government for checks. How many of those people love the government? They have nothing but terrible things to say about the government. The same thing with parents. When you're financially dependent on your parent, kids really resent their parents. They really do, because there's strings attached, of course. And they feel miserable about themselves being financially dependent. It's a really difficult syndrome that does a lot of damage. And then you throw the grandkids in the mix, and it's just another way to extract money from you, other sources of guilt. And I've seen it where, well, hey, Mom, if we just can't afford it, we can't afford to pay the mortgage on the house, and we're going to have to sell it and move all the way across the country, over to where the in-laws are, and you'll probably never see the kids again, is the implication. That's agonizing as a parent, and the kids know it, so they can extract more money from you. You also mentioned somebody who keeps running up debt again. So a lot of times we're financially enabling terrible behaviors. People are addicted to drugs. This happens all the time. Some of the worst substance abuse and mental health issue clients that I've ever seen, they're using their parents' money to go buy drugs, buy crystal meth, and get into all sorts of trouble. So it's literally killing them, probably much quicker than being broke would. There's those long-term consequences that can play out and really tug at your heartstrings as a parent.
And I was thinking to myself when I got that question, had I called my dad and said I'm $40,000 in debt and he was able to help me, he may have helped me, but he would have taken charge of my bank account, meaning he wouldn't have just paid my credit card bill out. He would have said, okay, this is going to be completely open for you and I. And for the next 6 months, we're going to see where the money's going together. It seems to me, then kids back off and say, no, I'm not going to do that. What do you think about something like that?
I think that money does come with strings attached, if not subconsciously or emotionally. And I absolutely think that if you are going to be giving money in a situation where you know that you're creating a dependency and you're enabling, that you should absolutely have strings attached to it. And like I said, maybe not giving cash, but get in there if you want, or hire somebody to get in there. The other thing that people don't think about is what is the impact of this financial assistance to this child's relationship with their siblings? Because quite often the siblings are very resentful about what's going on. They can very clearly see that this other sibling is taking advantage of the parents. And how do you make sense of that and your estate? So I'm talking about people who have typically more money, but even people who don't have a lot of money have estates that people have very emotional attachment to what's in that estate. And how is that impacting them? And so one of the strings attached could be, I'm tracking all of this and it's coming out of your part of the estate. As a matter of fact, I've seen that help with sibling relationships, because the thing that you might not be aware that you're doing is you might be creating a situation where your other kids hate that child. And you'd like to think that they're going to help take care of that child when you're no longer there. You might be creating a situation where you're destroying the sibling relationships also by your behaviors.
I think everything you're saying is so true. And I've heard so many of these stories. Okay, so now the parent wants out of it. In that New York Times article, there were a lot of things: stick to your guns, step down gradually, use specific language. How do you suggest that a parent start dwindling down the support they're giving?
It's going to come down to a plan where you're, and again, it could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I mean, I actually don't really care, because what I can tell you is they're going to do nothing until the last minute. And the reason I know that is because otherwise they'd already be doing what you wanted them to do. You'd be supporting them through college. Now they got a job and off they go. If you're not in that situation, then they're probably going to push it to the last minute, because you know what? You've already told them you were going to stop giving them money, haven't you? How many times have you told them?
I can't keep doing this, blah, blah, blah.
Of course, it only makes logical sense that they're not going to believe you, because you're actually not a credible source of information at all about what you're going to do in the future. Part of it is, I think, it's a process, right? You have to really recognize that you're hurting your child because you think you're helping. This is how you're hurting. You have to understand that things are going to get way worse before they get better. That's the extinction burst. So you're hoping that everything's going to be fine. No, they are going to up the ante on anything they were doing once you stop giving money. A lot of parents, though, they need a timeline. They want to feel like, okay, well, I gave them this 6 months. The other thing you could do is make the money a specific amount. So you're offering financial support, but maybe it's X amount per month for 6 months. When they call you saying, what about this? And I need that, the answer is no. So you could practice saying no for 6 months while you're still offering financial support. You could also look, I'm not going to give you cash, but I'll give you some career counseling. Good luck. Probably not the issue. Career counselors will love it though, because you'll be paying them, or you're paying for other things like health insurance, that sort of thing. But I will say this too. You might think, oh, I'll make the mortgage payments, but I can't even tell you how many times I've seen the parents later find out that the kid took out a second mortgage. Because the bottom line is they have a money disorder. This is the way I want you to think about it. Even if it's not a substance use disorder, it's a money disorder. It's overspending. It's compulsive spending, perhaps. It's definitely financial dependence. They have a disorder. If they run up their credit card at $40,000, what makes you think they're not going to do it again? Because you scolded them? Of course they're going to do it again. I mean, whatever led to that is going to continue. And so that's where part of it is. You gotta kind of have to let go a little bit. You're going to kind of have to let them experience some negative consequences. I'll tell you what, I go to work now because I like it, but that wasn't always the case. As a matter of fact, I might not want to go to work tomorrow, but I'm going to because I need the money, because I don't want to suffer. You have to create that situation for people to get them moving.
So let me ask you another scenario where the kid's doing great. They're just starting out. Let's say they both have great jobs. They've been responsible. the parent gives them $100,000 or $200,000 to help with a down payment on a house. So they're living really beyond their means. They couldn't afford this $1.5 million house without their parents. Is this setting up anything, or is this just a starting life gift that's okay and the kid understands it that way?
Yeah, are my parents listening? Are you going to send me some money for my next down payment? I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but I'm on the fence with this one because I actually hope to be able to be in a position to help my kids with a down payment. But really, it comes down to what are their behaviors. Let me put it this way. I hope I raise my kids in a fashion in which I'd be overjoyed to help them with a down payment on a house. That's going to be entirely based on their behaviors around money. Frankly, there's no way I'm giving them money if I feel like they're living above their means and they're struggling to pay their debt. Now I just made it worse. The maintenance cost on a house they can't afford is way more than they can afford. So am I setting up a situation that's going to hurt them in the long run? Or am I using my financial blessings in a way to give my children a better life along the way that doesn't hurt them? What's on the flip side, be careful about this too. It's like, let's say that you're able to amass a net worth of a few $1,000,000 and then you're going to wait till they're 70 to give it to them. I think part of it is balancing that a little bit, but it really comes down to the behaviors that your children are exhibiting. That determines whether your financial help is actually help or whether you've been hurting them with it.
Okay, I agree with that. And I've always wondered about that. Then you say about this whole idea of waiting till they're 70. How many adult kids do you think sit around and think, I know my parents have $5 million. Their house is worth $2 million. They've got a condo worth $500,000. When they kick the bucket, I'm going to be fine. So I don't really have to save right now.
I see this all the time too. And I've heard it just like that. I'll say, why aren't you putting money in your 401k? I don't need to worry about it. My parents have X amount of money and I'm going to get it all when they die. Why are you only working 15 hours a week? It's enough to pay for this. When they die, I'm going to be able to do whatever. People will quite literally suppress their life's mission. They'll suppress their productivity. There's so much benefit in hard work and working for something that you want and seeing the success and seeing the failure and the feedback. It's just the best way to live, is having these goals and achievements, and you're robbing them of that. So I'll tell you right now, I got a 12-year-old. And I told him the other day, and by the way, I have so much more net worth than I had growing up or that I ever thought I would have. This is something I worry about. I grew up with nothing. And so now I'm fairly wealthy and I live in Boulder, Colorado. This kid is having an experience that I couldn't even dream of as a child. I'm conscious of it. And I said to him, I said, hey, Ethan, I said, you know that you're not getting one penny of the money that I have. He goes, oh yeah, I know, of course. And I was like, yes. All right, now between you and I don't think he's going to listen to this. He might end up getting some, but I don't want him to have that in his mind. I'm here to love you. I'm here to support you. I'm going to help you through college, but you got to go make it. You got to go make your own way in the world. And I actually see him now. And I'll tell you this right now, he's 12 and he's like, Dad, I want to retire when I'm 30. This kid right now, every dollar he gets from his birthday, from a holiday, he invests it all. He tracks his stocks. He's got over $10,000 invested at age 12 from mowing lawns. He's a hustler. He's got this vision in mind. And at the same time, I'm not having to give him the Great Depression experience that I'm a child of children of that. I grew up with tremendous amount of scarcity and a scarcity mindset, and there's not enough and going to bed hungry. And I don't feel like I need to do that to him. I can create that same level of motivation, and I love to see it, but from an experience of relative abundance.
A lot of our listeners have kids still in college, okay? What kinds of things can they do at this point to start this whole idea of building financial independence with their kids?
I think it's having discussions about it. Like, what is your plan for after college? Also, like alerting them to when the support's going to end. Hopefully they know that already. Also thinking about what are they doing over the summer? Are they working? Have you encouraged them to essentially get a job? It's so funny. Like when I was growing up, I'm thinking about my own life too, but my mom, when I'm 18 or 19, she's like, "Yay, guess what? You're working for the road commission this summer. Yeah. I got you a job." And I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." So then I'm out there shoveling asphalt all day. I'm like, "Oh, I'm staying in college. I'm working hard." So some of that, for me anyway, I realized I didn't want to be a manual laborer like that. All respect to manual laborers. You're stronger than I am. But I saw a different vision. And so hopefully you've already instilled that in them, that they need to be independent and they're working. And if not, and they're not out of college yet, this is your call to action. Like make sure they're working this summer instead of just traveling, perhaps.
That's funny because I listen to what you're saying, and all that's true. And you have a 12-year-old. So I'm going to say you haven't been there quite yet.
Correct.
And I know a lot of situations where there's 3 or 4 siblings in a family and there's one. They've all had the same experience. They've all been raised having to work all summer. They've all been told they're not going to get anything, but there's one that just keeps getting either can't keep a job and it's always someone else's fault, then can't figure out how to get a job, doesn't manage his money or her money well. Why does that happen when all those right things were in place for everybody else?
Oh, tell me about it, Denise. I'm worried about my younger son.
Okay.
So my older one's saving, investing annual. My younger was like, I'm gonna spend it. And I'm like, oh no. And he's 8, but I'm already worried at night. Oh no, what's happening? Is he gonna be like that? What's crazy too is there's the nature nurture debate. And as clinical psychologist, I've worked with thousands of kids, actually. That was my specialty. I gotta tell you, same family, same behaviors, same parenting, radically different personalities and results. And the bottom line is we have to tailor what we're doing for that child's personality and understanding. Some kids, for example, maybe they have a learning disability or something. Maybe like school isn't quite their thing. Maybe they're just more focused on the short term and enjoying the moment. So that's great. That's a good part. We need to enjoy. And meanwhile, you have another kid who can never enjoy the moment because they're totally worried about the future. And so for them, we're trying to get them to enjoy the moment. For those people enjoying the moment, we're trying to get them to think long term. There's just no easy answer because each child is so different. But the bottom line as a parent is same thing as a psychologist is this: what behaviors are they exhibiting? And what can I be doing? And we're talking about money now. What am I doing with money? What could I be doing with money to reinforce a certain type of behavior? For example, if I want to reinforce what I did for my kids is I'm like, well, I want them to become investors. And so up to a certain dollar amount, my wife capped me because my kid was out mowing all this lawn. I said, every dollar you give me, I will double it if you invest it. Whoa. And then I showed them what that was. Again, my wife capped me out because my 12-year-old was making us go broke. Yeah, exactly. Because he hacked the system. But that type of thing. And so I will reward kids with treats and extra iPad time and money for behaviors I want to see. When they're not exhibiting those behaviors, no reward, if not a punishment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to go back to that parent that's got the kid sitting on the couch and not getting a job, his debt and all this. And I want to go back to how hard this is for the parent. I want you to say what you said again, because they're going to feel an enormous amount of guilt, right? Go through the feelings that they're going to have as they go through this. The possibility that the kid may or may not hurt themselves, the possibility that the kid's going to move across and be estranged for them, go no contact from them, which is the biggest thing happening right now. How do we give these parents strength to go for it?
It's so challenging if this behavior has been in place for a long time. And hopefully we're catching some people who are at the beginning stages of this. But again, as a clinical psychologist, and I worked in the public school system for over a decade before I got into financial psychology, the kids with the worst outcomes were the ones who had really loving, nurturing parents. Countless times I've been in the police station with one of these children. The mom loves them so much. Oh, it's such a great kid. I love him. And it just misunderstood. And sitting there going, you realize you're going to jail right now with the cops right there handcuffed. And the kid just doesn't believe it. Doesn't believe it. This can't possibly be happening. The bottom line is, this child is going to experience real life consequences that are probably way worse than what you're going to be doing to them, unless you can start training them around this and recognizing that you're the one who's been reinforcing this behavior, and make some efforts to try to reinforce a different behavior. So, I'm going to give you some money, but you got to get a job. Well, all I could get is this job, which is way below what I'm doing. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'll match every dollar you're making in that job for the next year. So from now on, you don't get any money from me, but I'll double what you make at whatever job you get. Show me the paycheck. I'll sit there. I'll write another check for double that. So looking at ways so you might say,
motivate
well,
them. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and also, what are you reinforcing? You're reinforcing that person going out and getting a check. It may not be as much as they want it to be, but that is a much better way to reinforce your child based on the work that they're doing. So to provide that love and support in behaviors you want to see.
And then slowly, would you wean off that? Now they're living beyond their means because you're doubling it, but I understand that you're supporting that they're getting up every day and going to work. That's a huge change from what happened before. So how do you slowly then wean off of that?
Well, I might. I also know I've worked with very wealthy families who were never stopped. They're like, look, I got one child who's killing it out in finance or business. I got another one who wants to be a teacher and wants to teach art, wants to teach music. And that is a relatively low paying job compared to the other one. So we are going to supplement their salary. I want them to follow their passions as long as they're not spending in a way that's outrageous or that's harmful. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's not just that money is bad. It's just analyzing it to say, is it bad in this particular situation? Is it getting that child ahead? Are they enjoying life? Are they happy? Are they fulfilled? Or am I somehow hampering their development by keeping them dependent?
So the kid who's killing it in business, or someone becomes a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, they've went through all this school, they've worked so hard, they're working night and day. Someone else wants to be an artist or a teacher or whatever, fine. Then you're going to supplement. The kid that's doing really great is being punished for doing really great because the parent's supporting the other kid.
Well, possibly, but in those scenarios, I would also think about, well, that's going to come out of your estate.
Oh, okay. So you keep a record of all that. Okay.
Yeah, so especially if you feel like any sort of like sibling is going to be feeling like this isn't fair. I think it's really important to like honor that, because exactly what you said, that other person may have followed their passion, but maybe they went to school 10 years longer and suffered longer as a result. And they might be resentful. Oh, you don't want your children to resent each other.
Right.
That's a terrible use of money.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Okay. Now, as you get older, and are your parents still with you? Your parents still alive? Oh yeah. Cause you said, I hope they're not listening. Are they going to give you a down payment on your next house? When do you think you really put it out there for your kids as you get older to understand where you are financially? Because eventually you don't know what's going to happen. You're 80 years old, your mind's still pretty good, but slowly that's going to go away. And it happens really quickly. I watched this with my own parents, and it was very important. We had a good sense of where everything was, what they had, how it needed to be used, and that sort of thing. So when you say to your kid, you're not getting anything, what age do you think you really sit down with your kids and talk about what's there and what needs to be done? Because eventually they're going to take over for you.
Yeah. And I will say this too, that for most people, regardless of what you think you're going to leave them, who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to happen to you? You could be in a long-term care facility for 25 years and the entire estate's drained. I mean, what a terrible thing that would be for a child to think they're getting something their entire lives, and then they restrict what they're doing in life, and then all of a sudden they don't get anything. That might not be entirely in your control. Or maybe something happens with investments or whatever it is, or a business goes under. So I would also say that, look, it's also, you're acknowledging reality to a degree for most people that you're not sure that they're going to get a penny. So I actually think that's not a bad message to give. And then even as you're getting older and planning, you might have that conversation when you're 50, 60, 70, but who knows? With AI, you'll probably live to 150 anyway. So there might not be anything left over. I think it's whenever you feel like you're comfortable having that conversation, whenever you feel like it's not going to hamper their drive. I would say by the time somebody's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, chances are what you've seen is probably going to continue. Maybe they're playing more pickleball now, but some of that work drive and how they're approaching life is pretty well established.
When you have responsible adult children, but you see them, I don't know, doing silly things with their money, do you just bite your tongue? It's none of your business at that point. You wouldn't want your parents to comment on how you're saving or what you're doing or what you spent your money on, would you?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Every now and then my dad will say something to me like, hey, if you ever want any feedback about some of your parenting stuff, just let me know. I think being open as a source. And by the way, I always want it.
Right.
Because I'm irritated when he says it, but I also want it because he's wise. And I would hate for him to notice something and not share it with me. So I think it's asking permission from your kids if they want to hear it. I do think that's a possible benefit. You'll know whether they don't want to hear it or not. It's hard to bite your tongue. If you see your child hurting themselves in a certain way, it's hard not to share it. But you also have to tread lightly because they may never want to share anything with you ever again.
That's why the podcast is called Bite Your Tongue. We're all trying.
Right.
But this has been great. I want to say, you're terrific at this, and you just put it out there the way it is. And that's the way it should be said. I think you're going to wake up so many parents with this because everyone else is so much more cautious. But you say, you got to do it, and it's going to hurt, but you got to do it.
Thanks for having me.
But you've got to leave our listeners with 2 takeaways now.
2 takeaways.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So number 1, of course, you're taking care of your children. This is your job. It's one of the things that made you a great parent. And sometimes you got to shift it. Sometimes you realize the way that you're loving and supporting them is leading to results you're not wanting to see. It can be tough to change, but don't do it alone. Get some help, get some emotional support. You don't have to do this alone.
Thank you so much, Brad. And your kids are really lucky, and your wife is too. And I've just really enjoyed having you as a guest. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. This conversation went so much differently than I thought it was going to go. He's a tough nut. I think anyone listening that's been supporting and enabling their adult kids need to figure out now how to stop for the sake of everyone. And I think his advice about if they do get a job and padding their paycheck a little bit, as long as they're getting up and going to work, sounds like a pretty good idea. So it's our job to stop. And it's hard. It's going to cause us an enormous amount of pain and an enormous amount of listening to people say, what are you doing? How can you do this? Look how your child is suffering. But in the end, building that financial independence sounds like it's the most important thing to do. Anyway, I'm going to share a lot of links to Brad's work, his resources on financial independence, and how to have these hard conversations with adult children. These are tough ones, and everyone knows someone who's struggling with this. So share the episode with people you think will benefit from listening. I think it's a great one. You should share it a lot. If there's anything else you want to share or an episode idea, call us on our listener line at 719-347-1106 or email us at biteyourtonguepodcast@gmail.com. And one more time, I always have to ask for support. We do all of this on a shoestring out of our own pockets. A new way to support us is to subscribe on Substack. Or you can also still visit our website, look for the Support Us tab, and you can donate as little as $5. And now a huge shout out to Connie Gornt-Fisher, our audio engineer. Thank you, Connie, for everything you do. To all of you listening, thank you so much again. And remember, as you head out the door today, sometimes you may just have to bite your tongue.